Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present you with the lecture on NOCLAR, that is non-compliance with laws and regulation. A little about myself before we go on with the lecture. My name is Ahmad Javed Vora. I'm a fellow member of ACCA. I also have an MBA degree. I am currently teaching as an assistant professor with Zabist, primarily looking after the MBA program, Finance and Accounts. Before that, I was been associated with the leading conventional and Islamic banks in the country, and I started off my career with A.F. Ferguson and Company Chartered Accountants. Now, before we move with the presentation and the slides, we need to understand that what is NOCLAR and what was the need that NOCLAR came into existence. The question is pretty clear. As you all understand, as we all understand, being professional accountants and being members of ACCA, we are bound by the code of conduct. Now, throughout the world, all professional accountants are bound by a certain code of ethics, and that code of ethics has been adopted by IFAC. All member bodies have adopted the code of conduct of IFAC, and slight amendments have been made if required to do so. Now, because of the corporate scandals which have been happening throughout the world, our profession, the accountancy profession, has come into a lot of questions and criticism. And in order to enhance the transparency and improve the reputation, and in fact maintain the reputation of our profession, we have a new standard known as NOCLAR. Okay? We'll go into the details of NOCLAR. Let's see what the session will be covering. Understanding what is NOCLAR, the need for NOCLAR, the general framework as defined, the obligation of auditors, the obligation of other professional accountant in public practice, obligations for senior public accountants in business, and obligation for other professional accountant in business. Let us start. Now, what is NOCLAR? It's a standard which looks at very serious and harmful non-compliance and focuses on all professional accountants. It has been issued by the International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants, a body of International Federation of Accountants. Now, focus on the word serious and harmful, because in a lot of places, an auditor's judgment is what is going to be called for. What does NOCLAR does? NOCLAR provides a guide to the judgment of professional accountant on how to respond in cases of non-compliance. Now, in the bracket, the word public interest is written. We have to identify what type of non-compliance are we talking about. I have a list here, and we're going to have a discussion over it. I'm just briefly going through what the definitions are saying about NOCLAR, right? What type of NOCLARs? Just some examples. You have tax fraud, you have securities fraud, you have non-compliance with environmental regulations. Now, the International Ethics Standard Board for Accountants define NOCLAR as, NOCLAR is defined as an act of omission or commission, intentional or unintentional, committed by a client or employer, including by management or by others, working for or under the direction of the client or employer, which is contrary to the prevailing laws and regulations. An act of omission, something which has been omitted by a client or the management, or commission, right? It is either that they have made an omission they did not know about, and it was an unintentional omission, or that it was a intentional omission, or a commission, that is they've actually taken an action to do something wrong. They haven't omitted anything, they have made an action, they've performed an action to omit something, or they've performed an action to perhaps record an amount which was not supposed to be recorded, right? That's act of commission. It can be either intentional or unintentional. Now, the history of the standard is that it took about 6 years for the standard to came into effect. It was approved in 2016, and by the mid of 2017, it was supposed to be implemented. Accordingly, all accountancy bodies in the world, those which are members of IFAC, they updated their code of conduct as well. The same has been incorporated in ACCA's code of conduct. ACCA's examination syllabus have been accordingly updated. Now, the ethics board, throughout this period, remained in touch with the International Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. And there were about 3 exposures drafts which were presented, after which this standard came into effect. Now, what was the need? We all know that if as ACCA members or as professional accountants, every accountant is bound by professional conduct, professional behavior, and principle of integrity. Then what was the need for this to come in place? Throughout the world, it was realized that in a lot of cases, when accountants see a NOCLAR happening, they actually either do not respond to it, and because they do not respond to it, they tend to choose and resign from the assignment or from the employer. What was the reason behind this? Was the reason and the principle of confidentiality, which is under the code of conduct, which bounds us auditors and accountants to keep the information of your client or your employer confidential. So in order to address this, NOCLAR was established. So NOCLAR came into effect in order to give the accountants a guidance as to what if when you see a non-compliance happening, how are you going to take decisions? It allows all the accountants to set aside the principle of confidentiality. This never happened before. This is happening for the first time, that the principle of confidentiality can be kept aside if the accountant believes that the NOCLAR would be in the public interest. We're going to take this further. I just have a little question from you guys. How many of you have actually faced NOCLAR so far working in your organization? Can you please respond to me in 5 minutes? Are we getting the questions?
So we've got comment from Hanifa Suleiman. She said that most of the time we don't comply with all taxes.
All right, let's wait for 2-3 minutes more. Let's see if more questions come.
We have a comment from Usman Hamid Bhatt. He has said that NOCLAR sometimes happens in my organization and I report to the management timely.
All right, that's excellent. Before Osama, there was another question or a comment. Can you please tell me what was it? It was about environmental issues.
Mehwish Mehman has said that one of the component of my work is to analyze the compliance to laws and regulations. It is most of the time difficult to ensure compliance at all levels. Mostly compliance to taxation laws remains a big problem.
All right. Okay, I got your questions and your concerns as well. All of these concerns are valid, and this is where I'm hopeful that this session will help you and guide you as to when you see a non-compliance, how you're going to evaluate it and how you're going to address it. All of us are facing that, and this is happening throughout the world. But there's a certain fine line that you have to see what type of non-compliance. Non-compliance, for example, if your client misses out a tax filing date, just you want to return, you want to file the tax return, right? And you missed the date. That's also non-compliance, but that non-compliance does not fall within the ambit of NOCLAR, because NOCLAR say that it has to be a very serious and harmful non-compliance, which in turn results in strong public interest. So filing a return, missing out a deadline of filing a return does not necessarily falls into that category. In order to identify public interest, it became very difficult. Let me share this with you guys. It became really difficult to understand what do you mean by public interest. So what basically the ethics board did, they gave us certain guidelines. Let me just quickly move forward so I can see this and then we'll go back. NOCLAR covers these 8 non-compliances. All non-compliances falling under this ambit would constitute NOCLAR according to ethics board. Now it can be fraud, corruption, bribery, security market trading, anti-money laundering, banking, financial products, public health and safety regulations, data protection, tax, pensions, and environmental protection. Now one of you said something about environmental protection not being complied with. These are the 8 categories under which we are going to see how the NOCLAR is being fit, right? Now, laws and regulation which directly have impact material amounts and disclosures in the financial statement. First, you guys need to understand this. Other laws and regulations that are fundamental to an entity's business operations. Now, for example, there's a Companies Act, right? Applicable on companies. There's Income Tax Ordinance of Pakistan, applicable on companies. Now, within the ambit of Companies Ordinance and Income Tax Ordinance, there are other regulations, particularly to the client's business. For example, if you're working for a financial institution, you're working for a bank, you have the state bank's prudential regulations. So you have to see that whether the non-compliance is being made firstly with the Companies Act, etc., or Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2010, or it is being affected under a specific regulation specific to your business of your company or your client. For example, if I talk about state bank's prudential regulation, all banks are supposed to be following that. Now, let's suppose that you're engaged in the audit of a particular bank and you find a certain non-compliance. Now, that non-compliance automatically becomes serious because your client is not following the regulations which is implemented. Now, when you identify such implementation, such irregularity, how you're going to respond to it? We're going to see that one person here said, I think it was Mr. Osama, who said that whenever I see non-compliance, I report directly to the management. Yes, it's fine, and we're going to see that what if you report to the management and you don't see the management acting upon it. Okay? The last line is the personal misconduct and clearly inconsequential matters are excluded. Personal misconduct it means if you're not concerned about what the management, a particular person within the management is doing on a personal level. If it's affecting your client, if it's affecting your employer, that matter is to be accepted. For example, everything, the person in your organization, those charged with governance in the organization, they are working perfectly fine. They're ethical, and they're working in the organization in a very good manner. There's nothing wrong with it. But on a personal level, that person, let's say, is a tax evader. Now, that does not comes within the ambit of NOCLAR. We're concerned with the organization. Either it can be your client or it can be your employer. All right. Now, what is the standards objective? To enable the professional accountant to comply with the ethical duty to respond to NOCLAR in public interest, to simulate actions that mitigate the effects of NOCLAR, or better, deter it altogether. And we want that, right? We want certain actions to be taken so that either NOCLAR effects minimizes, or in future NOCLAR does not take place. Stimulate increased reporting of significant NOCLAR to public authorities. This is really important, that we need to significantly report significant NOCLAR to public authorities. How you're going to do it, we're going to discuss that as well. Now, when we need to dissect a NOCLAR an act that cause substantial harms, involves serious adverse consequences to investors, creditors, employees, general public in financial and non-financial terms, has wide interest implications. Example, financial loss resulting due to which there's a significant loss to investors. Breaches of environmental laws and regulations that endanger health and safety of employees or public. I want to discuss certain examples which took place throughout the world, that what type of non-CLAR happened in the world. The first example is that of Rolls-Royce. We all know about Rolls-Royce, right? It turns out for about 20 years, Rolls-Royce were acquiring lands in various countries of the world, including Brazil and all, by giving out bribes, right, in those countries. They were also involved in certain other activities through which they were acquiring lands. When investigation took place and technically speaking they were pleaded guilty, they had to pay the British and American government amounts in penalty worth over 600 million pounds. Similarly, another incident or a scandal took place, and I'm sure you guys are aware of it, the BP oil spill, जिसको कहते हैं deep water horizon. The company, when there was a spill, and because of that spill, the company actually, what happened, the company knew that this is going to have some really bad environmental problems. Their equipment was faulty, but they did not took care of that, right? There was 11 counts of manslaughter. People died, 11 people died. They lied to Congress about it, and because of that they had to pay $4.5 billion. And apart from that, because of all other irregularities and to clean up the impact of whatever was spilled, they had to pay another $18 billion. Another example, an international example, is of Volkswagen. They designed a car which started emitting nitrogen oxide 40 times more than that was allowed, because of which they had to pay a lot of amount in penalties. So yes, whoever talked about environmental regulations, that those are really important. For example, now cars even in Pakistan have to maintain a certain standard which is like Euro 2, Euro 4, etc. So now, being auditors and being a professional accountants, we are supposed to be looking at the fact that whether the company is in compliance with that or not. If they're not, how we're going to tackle it. We've already discussed it. Okay. Before I move forward with this, another thing which I remembered, a few years back, a very big non-compliance also happened in Pakistan, in the financial industry. It was KSB Bank. If you guys are aware of it, what was happening? The bank was not complying with the regulations of the State Bank of Pakistan with respect to its capital adequacy ratio. Because of which the bank, what happened? Now it's a chain reaction, because the bank was non-compliant. The risk was being faced by what? The public, the depositor, etc. So eventually, State Bank intervened or whatever happened. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that the consequences of NOCLAR would have wide public impact. Did KSB had wide public impact? Of course it did. They had a lot of depositors, a lot of people had took loans from the bank as well. So how would depositor recover its money if people are not going to even pay back, or the bank does not have liquidity? Are we clear on that? What the standard includes inconsequential matters like small matters, personal misconduct unrelated to business. We already discussed this. Non-compliance not committed by a client or employer. For example, a client missed out a tax file date, not a reportable matter. We have already discussed these matters. The general framework of NOCLAR. The first one, I'll read it a little slower and you guys can read it with me. Obtain an understanding of the matter, address the matter, determine whether future action is needed, determining whether to disclose the matter to an appropriate authority, and documentation. I'm just going to discuss this briefly right now, and I'm going to tell you what these statements mean, because the details of which would be discussed later on. Obtain an understanding of a matter. The first thing is identify what non-compliance has actually took place. Right? It can be environmental. You might have find some money laundering activity happening. Fine. Address the matter. How are you going to address the matter? The first way to address the matter is, of course, with the management or those charged with governance. And when I say those charged with governance, I mean the directors, those who are responsible to set the tone in the organization. So whatever you're facing, first of all, we need to understand that pehla step is with the management. You take up the matter with the management, you tell the management that there has been a certain non-compliance or you see a certain type of money laundering activity or a tax fraud or a security fraud happening in the organization, and that this should be rectified. All right, now let's say you address the matter, determine further action is needed. Once you address the matter, you have to see how the management has responded to it. Have they taken timely action? For example, according to the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2010, Pakistan, if you have identified a money laundering activity, you're supposed to report to the Financial Monitoring Unit within 7 days of that after being identification of that activity. So you know that the law is there, you know that you're supposed to be reporting it in 7 days. So you have to see in the address wala part, you have to see whether the management addressed the matter, and if they did they report appropriately within 7 days, did they rectify it? Even if they did not, you're supposed to be doing it. Because determining whether to disclose the matter to an appropriate authority, if you believe that despite the fact the management has taken an action, for example, koi non-compliance thi, your client was not complying with a particular regulation of the State Bank of Pakistan, right? And you took the matter up with the client agreed to it, and they actually rectified it. Now you as an auditor or an accountant, as a professional accountant working for the bank, need to decide whether you're going to report this matter to an appropriate authority or not. Do you think it's supposed to be, because it's rectified, right? How you're going to report it, when you're going to report it, we're going to discuss this as well. And finally, documentation. Yes, the standard requires us to document whatever NOCLAR has happened. All right, guys, let's move forward. Now, application of NOCLAR. The good thing is that NOCLAR is applicable on all type of professional accountants. The breadth and the depth of NOCLAR is basically on professional accountants who are serving in public practice, that is auditors. सबसे ज़्यादा focus of the standard is on auditors because of the nature of work they're doing. The second type of category is professional accountants who are in a senior position and they're working for a business. That is professional accountants in business. The third category is professional accountants who are engaged in public practice but are not involved in auditing. For example, they work for a particular firm, but they're not auditors. They might be for a tax assignment. They might be for another type of advisory assignment or documentation advice in internal IFRIC or internal controls, etc., etc. And the last category is professional accountants in business other than seniors. So we're going to look at what the standard says about different type of categories for accountants. Sorry about that. Okay, now obligation of professional accountants in public practice, that is auditors. The first category, the first thing we need to understand, understanding legal or regulatory obligation and taking actions. Okay, before reading all this, we need to understand, and I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this as well, of course, whenever there's a law about something, and if you're being uncompliant towards it, the law or the regulation also tells you an action you're supposed to take. Like for example, जैसे मैंने आपको अभी बताया anti-money laundering, that if you identify it, you're supposed to report it within 7 days to financial monitoring unit, right? If you identify certain thing, you know that there has been a non-compliance and the law exists and the law tells you that how you're going to go about it. The law is going to supersede NOCLAR, right? If you find a non-compliance and there's a silence in the legal world with respect to this non-compliance, right? You don't know what action to take, then you're going to take the actions which are going to be stated in this slide, and we're going to discuss that. For example, upon becoming aware of actual or suspected NOCLAR, establish what legal or regulatory obligation are triggered. Fine. Any reporting requirement, any prohibition regarding disclosing confidential information. Now, for example, one of you identify as a particular type of tax fraud in your organization. Okay? And you're working for your employer and you find that. Now you're confused. You know you're supposed to be reporting it because you're bound by a certain code. And you do not understand that whether you're supposed to be disclosing such a confidential information or not. Because we are bound by the principle of confidentiality. So if any law or regulation discourages you to disclose any such thing, for example, the Chartered Accountants Act or the Chartered Accountants Ordinance, पाकिस्तान का जो CA ordinance है, उस ordinance के अंदर एक regulation है that if as an auditor you are any type of disclosure can't be made prior to getting an approval from the management. That's clear. So if you're a practicing chartered accountant, you identify non-compliance, you talk to the management, right? And the management says, no, you're not supposed to be disclosing this. So according to that act bounds the chartered accountants not to disclose it, right? But NOCLAR tries to address that when it comes to ethics only, the ethical principles. That's their regulation, right? Now, once you've identified that, raise the matter with the management or those charged with governance. Of course, you need to follow the change of command. Advise them to rectify, mitigate consequences to stop the NOCLAR or report to appropriate authority. Fulfill professional responsibility. How you're going to fulfill professional responsibility is that you're going to test yourself. You're going to see yourself that A, you have been objective. The principle of objectivity shall be there. And you have to undertake this activity with due care and professional conduct. That way, when you're going to do that, you're going to make sure that all professional standards have been kept above, and that you have taken care of what your ethical duty as an accountant was required to do so. Now, the second part within the auditor's ambit is assessing response of management. Obviously, the ethics board has given us certain guidelines because all this, whatever we're going to discuss today, at the end of the day, depends on your judgment. Because you as a professional accountant, me as a professional accountant, we have to identify that whether there has been a non-compliance. If yes, what actions am I supposed to take? So this is particularly a very subjective matter. The standard is helping us in order to identify it. They're guiding us only. That this does not mean, what I'm trying to say, this does not mean that if there's something like this, uh, for example, the management, according to you, the management did not respond timely and you started behaving in a particular manner. So that's not how you're supposed to act. We're going to act in a matter which seems respectable, because as we all understand that we are expected to be courteous as well. Now, the various factors which are supposed to be included is, has the management responded timely? Was the matter investigated adequately? After the matter was rectified, was the NOCLAR disclosed to appropriate authority? The standard keeps on emphasizing the fact that even when you identify an NOCLAR and you have rectified it, do disclose the matter so that everyone knows that this happened and you have taken an action, so that the general public or the third party which is focusing on you must know that the professional accountant has acted in the best interest of the general audience, right? That we have not shown bias towards our client. Action taken to rectify, remediate, or mitigate consequences. Determining whether to take further action. We are supposed to be doing that as well. Determine if further action needed in public interest. Nature and extent will depend on various factors. Example, legal and regulatory framework, urgency and of the matter, credible evidence of substantial harm to stakeholders. Must apply third-party test. I'm giving you guys 5 minutes. I hope so far you guys are clear on what we are trying to achieve here and what the standard is saying. I'm giving you guys 5 minutes. What do you guys understand by third party? And what does standard means that apply the third party test in this scenario? Can you come up with certain examples, please? Thank you.
Hi sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So meanwhile, they're coming up with examples. Can you answer a set of questions that we have pending?
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Okay. So Hamza Saeed has asked that is identification of NOCLAR a part of auditor responsibility?
Okay.
Um, if
Hamza,
Irfan, yeah, okay, just answer that.
let, let me answer to Hamza first.
Okay.
Hamza, a good question. Yes, it is. First of all, we need to understand this, that we are not the auditors and professional accountants, we are not expected to identify all type of NOCLAR, okay? Obviously, people understand this, the profession understand this, that all NOCLAR won't be identified. It's not possible. We have certain timeline to conduct the audit as well, if we are all aware of that, right? But yes, it's an auditor's responsibility to identify a NOCLAR. How you're going to identify it? When you're conducting your audit, you're going to match everything with the regulatory requirements and the framework. And when you're conducting an audit, for example, you identify tax fraud, security fraud, a certain, for example, nowadays we have IFRS 9 coming in. And if you see a particular financial statements of a bank or an insurance company which is not following it, or to the contrary to what the accounting standard is saying, you are supposed to be identifying it and reporting it. That's NOCLAR, because now IFRS 9 is part of what State Bank of Pakistan is trying to, State Bank of Pakistan regulates, right? So similarly, auditors are responsible to identify NOCLAR, but all NOCLAR is not expected to be identified. Second question, please.
Okay, so the second question that we have, I think you've answered it before as well, but Irfan Mustafa has asked, is NOCLAR applicable to senior management?
Yeah, hi Irfan. Yes, it is. Let me repeat it again. NOCLAR is applicable on all type of professional accountants. Okay? The ethics board has given us 4 categories to it. The first category is that of professional accountants engaged in public practice, auditors. That's the first category. The second category is senior professional accountants in business. This is everyone working for any organization. And when we say senior professional accountants, uski details we have a particular detailed slide for it. So I'm going to discuss that later on. Then we have the third category, which is professional accountants in public practice, not engaged in audit. Matlab, you're working for a particular XYZ firm, but you're engaged in providing risk advisory services, you're engaged in providing internal audit services, you're engaged in providing tax consultancy, etc., but not external audit. And the fourth category is any professional accountant in business who is not in a senior position. I hope this makes clear. Other questions, please?
Okay, so the next question that we have is, say a finance director identifies non-compliance with safety requirements in the production area of a cement industry, but that was responsibility of director operations. Should finance director report to other board or outside authority to avoid any injuries?
Very, very excellent scenario you gave me. And yes, the finance director is responsible to do that. And we are going to discuss this as well in a while, but it's good that we are having questions like these. Excellent. Other questions, please?
NOCLAR is applicable in SMEs.
NOCLAR is applicable on every organization. Yes, now it's sort of difficult to identify a NOCLAR when it comes to an SME, because the problem we face is that SMEs themselves are not regulated. And when something is not regulated, you don't find a way to report it. It is applicable, but if you don't find anything to report to, you can't do anything. You're helpless then. So then there are other actions which the standard allows us, right? So we're going to discuss that as well. Any other question?
Okay, so we do not have questions, but we have comments regarding the third party question that you raised.
Yeah.
Abid Ali Rehan has said that third parties can be suppliers or government.
Okay.
Imran
Okay.
Tariq has said that your example of KSBL where third party was depositor which was badly suffered.
All
Umar Ali
right.
has said that third party here means the person to whom we are complaining. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. All right. That's why I asked you guys this, because what the standard says about third party it itself is a bit subjective, right? Third party is basically going to be a test, your personal test of objectivity. For example, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the guy who talked about the non-compliance being held in a factory production area of a cement company. अगर हम उसी example को elaborate करूँ या मैं आगे लेके चलूँ, इधर third party test क्या होगा finance director का? Third party test would be that just think for a while. You have to think this when you find a NOCLAR happening, just think for 2 minutes that what would another person, a third party would do in the same scenario अगर उसके पास भी सारे facts and figures मौजूद हों. All the facts and figures are available with another person. The same facts and figures which are available for you with you. वो बंदा इस सिनेरियो में कैसे एक्ट करता? एक ये है थर्ड पार्टी टेस्ट. दूसरा थर्ड पार्टी टेस्ट एक और है जो कि दोनों टेस्ट इसी के अंदर आते हैं कि फॉर एग्जांपल वो फाइनेंस डायरेक्टर इज सपोज्ड टू बी रिपोर्टिंग whether the finance director is supposed to be reporting to the management or not, because question यहाँ ये आया that the responsibility of this lies with the director's operation. Am I right? So the responsibility lies with director operation, but the finance director is thinking of reporting it. So there's a third party test. एक कि दूसरा बंदा मेरी जगह होता क्या करता? Okay, fine. Third, secondly, if I report to it, how would people in the surrounding, how would a third person would say that whether professional accountant acted in the best interest of the public or not? If you think that yes, if the finance director think that reporting to the management would result in people or anyone else saying that yes, the professional accountant acted in the best interest of the public at large, then you have acted how you were supposed to be. That is, you have acted in profession. You have you have complied with the professional conduct. Okay. I hope this clears my question and you're clear with what a third party is. We'll move forward a little and then we'll again have some questions. Taking action without reporting to management. Very interesting. But before I go to this, there's another thing which we need to know. The standard also allows us to take further actions. वो further actions क्या हैं? Reporting. Who to report? Let's establish that you identified and who to disclose. You identified a NOCLAR, you went to the management did not respond, for instance, and then you went to those charged with governance, for example, an audit committee, right? The risk management committee. You went to them, you reported to them. You're following the framework, and now you're thinking of disclosing it. You've asked the management says that you're not supposed to be disclosing it. Now you want to disclose it. There's no law which bounds you not to disclose it. मतलब आप अगर आप disclose करते हैं तो कोई law आपको रोकता नहीं, ठीक है? Ethically you're supposed to be disclosing it. Now standard says that before doing that you have to keep two things in mind. A, that the physical safety of the professional accountants and those being affected, वो physical safety जो है वो बार ना हो. ऐसा ना हो that the decisions you're taking or the steps you're taking can result in certain type of problems for you, because obviously this is a very serious matter when you're disclosing. For example, we took so much examples. We took example of KSB Bank. So if you were to take a certain step and you believe that you're being threatened in such a scenario, you can simply resign from the organization or the engagement. This is how you're supposed to act ethically. You can just keep a blind eye and you can stay with the organization, but this is not what's expected out of us. This is what we are bound by, that if we see something bad happening, we have reported, but we can't report it further because there's certain threats. that the best thing you can do, this is allowed by the standard, that we can resign from the engagement of the client, right? Or we can resign from our employment. Now, the standard further allows to the auditors that you can take actions without reporting to the management. Maybe you believe that the matter is so substantial that you're supposed to be reporting it without even informing to the management. अब किसको report करना है? Again, this becomes really important. There has to be someone. For example, if there's something going on in the company related to the Companies Act, you might report to this to the Securities and Exchange Commission. If there's something going on with income tax, you're reporting to, for instance, FBR. If it's related to prudential regulations, you're reporting to the State Bank of Pakistan. So we have regulations. We need to know that which body regulates this matter. If so, because unless and until we don't have that, we can't report to it. So that standard permits us to make certain disclosures to appropriate authority without even reporting to the management, but in exceptional circumstances. And those exceptional circumstances are that कि आपको ये लगता हो कि कोई बहुत बड़ा breach of law या regulation हुआ है जो कि stakeholders को बहुत बड़ा harm देगा, and that harm would be affecting the financial statements. ठीक है, अगर let's make a scenario. हम लोग ने KSB बैंक की क्योंकि बात लेके चले थे. Let's say कि KSB bank was operating and something like this happened. If you guys remember Lehman Brothers, right? Lehman Brothers, Arthur Edison was the accountants or the auditors for Lehman Brothers. Or what happened? They were publishing clean reports. So let's assume that KSB के साथ भी same चीज हो रही होती, right? And you're working with KSB. Let's say you're the financial controller or perhaps someone in the organization, and as an ACCA member, you're working there and you identify that the bank is not complying with the regulations of State Bank. They're not maintaining their mandatory adequate capital, etc., etc. So, and you knew that if you're going to talk to management, nothing is going to happen, but this is going to cause serious harm to the public. So what you can simply do, you could have simply reported to the State Bank of Pakistan. It's just like whistleblowing, right, guys? The second category, हमने एक कैटेगरी कवर कर ली है ऑडिट की, कि ऑडिटर्स के पास क्या रिक्वायरमेंट्स है. अभी इसके कंक्लूजन पे नहीं आए, कंक्लूजन में एंड में और फर्दर डिस्कस करूंगा. And I'll keep taking questions from you guys, don't worry. Obligation of senior professional accountants in business. ये हैं कौन लोग, पहले तो हम ये आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं. Directors, senior officers, senior employees, कौन, who can influence decisions. The decision makers in the organization are technically your senior professional accountants, CFOs, financial controllers, all HODs, ये जितने भी होते हैं ये senior professionals कहलाते हैं. So these would be categorized under this. What is expected out of these people? Obviously, the framework is not as stringent on senior professional accountants as it was on auditors. Okay, so what the standard says for them, that first of all, they're supposed to set a right tone and develop a framework for NOCLAR in order to prevent it. For example, if a NOCLAR happens, then how you're going to respond it. So it's the manager's responsibility as a senior that firstly set a right tone from top to bottom. Everyone at the bottom should be knowing that if a NOCLAR happens and they identify it, what is the chain of command, how they're going to respond to it. And if the seniors themselves identify a NOCLAR, what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to, that's the requirement, you're supposed to fulfill your professional responsibility. So whoever asked me a question regarding the finance director reporting a non-compliance regarding the health and safety, yes sir, you have to fulfill your professional responsibility. If you believe that's an NOCLAR, you're supposed to do it. Understand and comply with the laws and regulation. Raise the matter with superior and those charged with governance. Now, becomes really confusing, because if you're a head of department, who would you be taking up the matter to? A superior, perhaps the CEO. And if you think this, it's not right to take up the matter with the CEO, you can simply report to those charged with governance. And the word "those charged with governance" simply means the directors of the organization. Okay? Identify the problem, rectify, mitigate the consequences of it. Seek to completely eradicate the NOCLAR, right? NOCLAR को खत्म करना है. आपने identify कर लिया, you have to come up with a rectification plan, and then identify matters जिसकी वजह से next time similar NOCLAR ना हो. Another example, are we doing all this? Yes, we are. In practical world, we are all complying with these things. It's just the standard has made these things come under one umbrella. I'm taking a lot of examples from banking industry, because banking industry in Pakistan is very regulated and there's a lot of checks on it. Those who are engaged with the banking industry or working as auditors for them, one way or another, they know how many regulations and rules they have to follow. So why there is so much check on depositors, why there's so much check on banks giving out loans? You have to do KYC, you have to take the NICs, and you just have to take and just have to keep it with you. All these are being reported to the State Bank of Pakistan, by the way. Even if your client, let's say one of you are engaged in audit of a particular bank in Pakistan, and your client is and your bank is giving loans to an export oriented company, export loans, all the details of those export loans are supposed to be reported within 15 days to State Bank of Pakistan on every quarter. You as an auditor are supposed to be checking that as well. You're not just supposed to check the financial numbers, you're supposed to check whether the reporting is being done in a timely manner or not. And if it's so, are the numbers being checked up or not? This is what the standard is saying. So we are doing that already. There are certain, what is IFRIC? For example, State Bank requires banks to adopt IFRIC. That's internal controls over financial reporting. ICFR जिसको बहुत बोला जाता है यहाँ पे. ICFR के ऊपर बहुत सारे पाकिस्तान के अंदर assignments होते हैं. That is there to check the internal control. That is there to check that no non-compliance is being done. Right? So you have, as an auditor now, for example, you have to check कि क्या जो, for example, ICFR की assignment है, are we following that? Are we reporting it in timely manner? Are we following the things which are required by us? Right? Now, once as a senior accountant in an organization, let's say you work for ABC organization, आपने वहाँ पे एक problem identify कर ली है. आपको standard कहता है कि determine whether you're going to report this or alert the external auditor. अब एक question मैं आपसे करता हूँ, एक scenario दे रहा हूँ. Let's assume all of us work in a senior capacity for a cement manufacturing company, and we have identified a NOCLAR at a senior position. We've talked about this with those charged with governance. That is, the matter was taken up with the audit committee, the risk management committee, etc., etc. A remedial action has been taken as well. We are designing a framework कि आगे जाके ये ना हो. अब question ये आता है कि whether we are going to alert the external auditors or not. If so, my question from you guys is, why would I want to do it? For example, I'm the financial controller, you all are financial controller of the cement company. Why would you want to report this or alert the external auditor that this happened? Can you please come up with your answers? Iman, do we have questions? And do we have the responses?
Yes, we do have some questions and we have the responses as well.
Okay, first let's take up with the questions and then we'll look at the responses.
Okay, okay. Zishan Ahmed has asked, need to know how will NOCLAR be applicable to internal auditors with respect to reporting requirements, generally reporting to Board of Directors in case of non-compliance.
Okay. How it's going to be affected on internal auditors. Uh, Zishan was his name, right? Zishan, internal auditors are already reporting to the audit committee, right? And in certain circumstances, usually what we have seen that they directly report to audit committee. In certain circumstances, we've seen that the audit committee is first reporting to the management and then it's reporting to the audit committee. Like an internal auditor, because if the internal auditor is, let's say, a senior professional accountant in business category, that is, he's the head of internal audit and he identifies a particular type of non-compliance. So the internal auditor is already in a position that he's already reporting to the audit committee. He's already reporting to those charged with governance, right? So he is supposed to be taking action which is beyond this. His actions are going to be beyond those charged with governance. He has to see external, whether I'm supposed to be alerting the external auditor. Number two, whether I'm supposed to be reporting to someone outside the organization, that is an appropriate authority. This is very important for the internal auditor because they are already in liaison with those charged with governance, right? And ethically speaking, what you're supposed to do, ethically speaking, you're supposed to be reporting or alerting the external auditors. That is what that's why I asked you why we are supposed to be alerting the external auditors. I hope this answers your question. Yes, Iman.
Muhammad Ijaz has asked that my question is in context of internal audit. If something identified by internal audit staff is relevant to NOCLAR and internal audit head doesn't agree with that or is not keen to forward to management, then what should be the course of action for field or senior staff?
All right. I'll come to your question in a while because we have a different category for that. All right.
Babar Iqbal has asked that if the matter is not material in financial value but it is illegal activity, then we can call it material by nature and report it to authorities without telling management, right?
The standard, you can see, ethically speaking, you're supposed to be doing that and taking up the matter with the management. Ethically speaking, you're supposed to be doing that. It's a non-compliance. It's illegal. But if the amount is not material, then you're not supposed to be going into the hurdles of reporting it outside the authorities. You just take up the matter with the management. If management is not compliant, then you're not required by the standard that you go beyond a step further. करना तो है. For example, आपने कोई ऐसा नॉन कंप्लायंस देखा which is an insignificant amount which will not particularly affect the financial statement या यूजर्स के डिसीजन को अफेक्ट नहीं करेगा. सही है. अब अगर वो यूजर्स के डिसीजन को अफेक्ट नहीं कर रहा है और आपका अल्लाह भला करे कि अमाउंट छोटा है but it's illegal, they have not been complying with the laws, you take up the matter with the management, you ask the management to comply with it. If they are not doing so, the standard does not require you कि आप जाके उसको appropriate authorities को report करें. Still, if you want to do it, that's your personal decision. ठीक है, but the standard की कोई ऐसी requirement नहीं है. Standard ने clear कर दिया हमें that it has to be a material, it has to have a material effect. ठीक है, हमें long term effect देखना है और देखना है कि how many people are being affected by it. Further question?
That's it for the questions right now. Now we
Okay.
have responses to your question that you've asked. Sidra Haq has said that it is an ethical responsibility. Murtaza Barucha has said that we would discuss it with TCWG first. and then alert the auditor.
Okay.
And Irfan Mustafa has said that because as a part of management, we are bound to disclose to auditors if auditor raises or inquires about NOCLAR.
All right. Any
We
other
have,
response?
yes, Babar Iqbal has said that due to ethics and due to not being a part of that illegal activity. And
All right.
Adnan Ahmed Kasir has said that it's a matter of judgment. At my capacity, I will tell the external auditor because I want them to have check on us in order to avoid in future or our newly designed controls are effectively working. Yes.
All right. Great responses, especially the last one, brilliantly responded. Exactly. Someone said that first we're going to raise the matter with those charged with governance. I'm just repeating this again, that if you're in a senior capacity, guys, right? If you're in a senior capacity, so you're going to take up, and you've identified a NOCLAR, you're going to take up the matter with those charged with governance anyways. आप head हैं, आप CEO के पास जाते हैं, CEO does not respond to it, you're taking it to the directors, right? तो ये तो बात हमारी क्लियर हो गई कि we are already taking the matter to the directors. The thing was determine whether to alert the external auditors or not. Yes, ethically you are supposed to be alerting the auditor. And why are we supposed to be alerting the auditor? It was rightly responded to me that we have to check whether our internal controls are affected. We have to check whether we are compliant, and we want to have a check on us from a third party as well. Plus, guys, external auditor, when he or she understands that the company did this and that, they might change their opinion, or they might give out a statement in their report, or their judgment might change when they are doing their audit. So it becomes really important for us to raise such an irregularity, so the auditors in futures are vigilant when they are conducting the audit. And if per se that they're going to write a report to the management, in that report they're going to address this issue, that this issue came in and the management cleared that issue, for instance, who's going to be benefited with this? The wider public. When they're going to read the auditor's report, they're going to know that, okay, fine, a NOCLAR happened, the management took timely action, and the auditors agreed to it. So if you think from a reputation perspective, this is increasing the reputation of your client as well. Uh, just to quote you an example, it's not particularly related to this, but financial statements may, whenever a company's current ratio is out for a longest period of time and the company is facing accumulated losses, the equity becomes negative. What happens? The question on their going concern raises. The auditor raises the question on company's going concern. In order, on the contrary, the management, if they want to, they give a justification for it. They give the actions they have taken for it. For example, the management says the sponsors are going to inject loan, they're going to inject further equity, they're expanding their business line, etc., etc., whatever. All that is responded to by the auditor in the financial statements. What does it do? That helps the users, it helps the public, so public knows that the company is having problem or was having problem, the problem is being rectified upon, the action is being taken, and the external auditor has checked it. I hope we are clear with this, that why we are supposed to be alerting the external auditor. Ethically we are required to do so. Again, अगर कोई लॉ या रेगुलेशन हमें रोकता होगा डिस्क्लोज करने से इंफॉर्मेशन, दैट इज कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी shall not be breached, जैसे मैंने आपसे सीए एक्ट की बात की थी, then you are not supposed to be disclosing it, क्योंकि सीए ऑर्डिनेंस के अंदर ये चीज है. All right, that's their code of conduct which they are going to revise. I'm not aware of that. Determine if whether action in public interest is required. That is in light of response of a superior or those charged with governance. You guys said कि पहले डायरेक्टर्स वगैरह को ऑन बोर्ड ले लेते हैं with the non-compliance, and then we'll see that whether we should be reporting to external auditors. No, you have to see that if those charged with governance did not take the actions as required to do so. ठीक है, आपने आपने एक मैटर आपके सामने आया, आपको मैटर पता चला that this was the non-compliance. You've taken up the matter with the directors. The directors have not taken the appropriate action as it was required. Now, alert the auditor and decide that if the non-compliant is in public interest, report to or disclose it to the appropriate authority. The standard allows us to do so. All right, guys. Senior professional accountant in business, further action, determination of further action. कोई further action हम ले सकते हैं. Must apply third party test. Again, third party test आपको apply करना है. ठीक है. Course of further action, inform parent entity if applicable. Right? I'm sure you guys understand what the standard is saying. For example, Standard Chartered Pakistan. A non-compliance is happening in Standard Chartered Pakistan. The parent company is Standard Chartered Global, technically, right? And you're in a senior capacity. You reported to the directors in Pakistan. No one responded to whatever the NOCLAR was. The standard asks you to report to the parent company as well. For example, one of you is working for any company, let's say Agro Fertilizer, and you identify a certain type of NOCLAR happening. For example, let's take an example. The fertilizer industry is somewhat regulated when it comes to prices. The prices of urea. At times, the government keeps a ceiling to the pricing. Now you identify that in your company from other ways or from bribery or etc., or through commissions, the company is charging more prices. There's a lot of demand of your product, right? And your company is not complying with laws. For example, the per bag decided by the government is 3,000. What your company does is it reports 3,000 on papers, but it actually sells for 4,000. So you multiply that with a lot of bags and the amount comes in billions. We know that the company is in billions. The asset base is not bad. So you identify such a thing. You report to the management. You talk to Agro Fertilizers board of directors. You took up the matter with them. No one responded to you. What are you going to do? The standard says in such a scenario, go talk to the parent company. Take the matter up with with Agro Corporation. Tell them this is happening. Even after that they are not responding to it, take the matter to appropriate authorities, even if not required to do so. Now in this scenario, who's the appropriate authority? Who's governing them? You can take up the matter with perhaps a certain court. You can take up the matter with SECP, and you can't take up the matter with the legal fraternity or fraternity of that industry. ठीक है, क्योंकि वो खुद उनमें involved होता है. And the last is resign from employment relationship. This is what is expected out of us in a scenario where we identify a particular NOCLAR and we are in a position which is senior. So we are supposed to be taking these actions. Please make yourself clear with respect to this. Iman, I think there's a question. Can you please tell me what question it is?
Yes, we have two questions.
Yeah.
Omar Ali has asked that if we are not responsible for something but we see it being done, should we report it? For example, I'm not responsible for tax related transaction in my organization, but if I see tax evasion, should I report it?
Ethically, yes, you are. You're not it's happening in your organization and you're aware of it. Look, if you're not aware of something, you're not supposed to be taking action. Now you're saying that you are aware of it. So, and if you're like, let's say, just to give you, guide you a little, if you're not in a senior position, you can go and talk to the particular authority which is responsible for that department, let's say tax department, and you can talk to them within your organization that I'm seeing a particular tax evasion happening. If they do not respond, then you have further actions you can take. All right. What was the other question?
Khwaja Kazim Latif has asked that, for example, I'm part of senior management and I observe that management is not following the key requirement of withholding tax from salaries. Should I report CEO or to authorities?
Okay. First of all, you have to follow, like we said, you have to follow chain of command. If the amount is substantial and by the looks of it, I can analyze that it would be a lot, because if it's withholding tax of employees and you have a lot of employees, the amount can be substantial. If that's the case, the first point of contact is your CEO. If you think the CEO is not going to respond because you think that the CEO himself is involved, perhaps, let's say, or you think he might not take action, you can talk to you can report to those charged with governance, that is directors. How you're going to respond to directors? You can email them, you can try to get their contact details, you try to talk, take the matter with them. You can discuss it out with the audit committee as well, the audit committee of the board of directors. Okay. Upon their response, even if that response is not satisfactory, you can alert the external auditor. Then you can decide whether you're supposed to be disclosing this to appropriate authority or not. For example, अगर ये बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा आपको amount लग रहा है, you think that it's best that you can disclose the matter with FBR. But like I said before, because you're not responsible for this, please keep in mind that the standard asks you to be vigilant कि आपके लिए किसी किस्म का threat, physical threat ना हो. All right. We have to be very vigilant. It's not an easy task, and I mean, we are all aware that if certain thing happens and you report it, so the responses we get. So you have to be very vigilant. You have to see what is if outside कोई protection law है कि नहीं है. Laws and regulations for protection भी होते हैं, whistleblowing के भी protections हैं. So you have to identify that as well before taking up the matter. In your senior position, you're supposed to be doing that. And lastly, you're supposed to be resigning. Is there any other question?
Yes, sir, we do have a question.
Yeah.
Babar Iqbal has asked that you mentioned materiality in financial terms only. Material by nature is not what we should be taken seriously.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Babar Iqbal has asked that you mentioned materiality in financial terms only. Material by nature is not what should be taken seriously.
Babar, initially when we started off, we said it's financial material impact, and it also can be non-financial material impact. Okay. Acha, yes, non-financial materiality is important as well. Standard that they see, our scope is within the standard. The standard focuses on material mismanagement, which have financial or non-financial impact. The focus is on financial impact. Now, if we talk about non-financial impact, let's say health and safety, which was raised by someone within the session, if you identify a certain regulation not being followed, which is related to health and safety, right? A regulation which is not be, for example, an environmental regulation, for example, we took example of Volkswagen, जहाँ पे nitrogen oxide was 40 times than what was required. Again, इससे था क्या? It was a non-compliance. सही है, जिसका impact eventually बनेगा material, and the impact would be financial, would be a financial impact. For example, अगर health and safety से कोई fertility भी होती है, so that fertility would eventually result in a financial loss for the company. So at the end of the day, we have to measure materiality in financial terms. That's why the standard itself is focusing on materiality in financial terms. So we might have non-compliance which is not related to finance. ये जरूरी नहीं है कि income tax हो या tax fraud हो. Environmental hazards हैं, environmental non-compliances है. But at the end of the day, because of such non-compliances, the impact would be material on the financial statements and on the company. If you take a longer term view. I hope this answers your question. Any other question, Iman?
Yes, sir, we have one more question. Irfan
Yeah.
Mustafa has asked that does NOCLAR have geographical restrictions? During audit, we found various export-oriented companies use child labor, and this is critical if we report to their customer like Nike and Puma, etc. So, as an auditor of the company, do we have responsibility to report to them, or do we have geographical restrictions and we should report to authorities in Pakistan only?
Okay. Uh, a very valid question and a very valid concern, because I don't remember exactly how many years back, but few years back, this let's say 4 years back, 5 years back, this matter was taken up by certain foreign companies or foreign brands that they're not going to give manufacturing orders to companies or businesses which are employing child labor. And Pakistan name also came up, and a lot of actions were being taken at that time. I don't know what's further action has been taken. So if you identify a certain thing like that, yes, we are supposed to be reporting it. Now, whether the jurisdiction allows it or not, a very, very important thing to understand. Uh, we are always, as accountants, as auditors, we are always going to take legal help. Even if you take the exposure draft of the standard even says that you're going to take legal help. We have to take a lawyer on board which is going to take whether there's any jurisdiction restriction. If you think कि कोई jurisdiction की restriction है पाकिस्तान के अंदर, we can't do it. The lawyer can help you out with that. If we think that if the lawyer says no, there is no jurisdiction restriction, then ethically you can inform, because आपके client को order मिला है Nike से, let's say, and Nike requires, as per the contract, I believe there's a contract between Nike and your client. This is how it works. And in the contract, it would be written that the company, your client would not be employing child labor. Am I right? And your company has done, so that is a non-compliance, a very serious one, because if Nike takes back order, your company is not going to earn revenues. If your company is not going to earn revenues, it's going to affect the financial statement, so on and so forth. So it is expected out of us that we are going to take the help of certain legal fraternity. We can't be, of course, we're not that expert when it comes to all type of laws. Even when it comes to common law, we might have to take certain certain legal expertise when we are in a situation जहाँ पे हम खुद से decide ना कर सकें. I hope this answers your question. Iman, are we left with any question?
No, sir.
All right. Okay, guys, let's move forward. Obligations of professional accountants in public practice other than auditors. ये वही कैटेगरी है जो कि हमने जो थर्ड कैटेगरी थी, दैट इज you're an accountant, you're working for a firm, but you're not engaged in audit. You're engaged in other assignments. Now, during that other assignments, I'll take Mr. Irfan's example, and I'll take that further. That let's say he's working as an auditor. He works for XYZ firm, right? And XYZ firm is the auditor for ABC company. ABC company manufactures products for Nike USA. I work for 123 firm, and I'm their let's say financial advisor. So they have appointed me as well. Now, during the course of audit, Irfan firms did not identify the non-compliance being happened, that is the child labor being employed. They did not identify it due to, let's say, sample size or other reasons. They were not able to identify it. I, on the other hand, I was working on an assignment which was related to financial advisory, and I identify a certain type of non-compliance with respect to child labor. Now, since I'm a professional accountant, I'm engaged with the client, I'm supposed to be taking actions as well. Now, what actions would that be? That's pretty simple. I identify the problem, I'll go to the management and I'll talk to the management that I've identified that you're not complying with the certain regulations your client asked you to do so. You're not complying with the labor laws, etc., etc. And your management does not respond to it. The management of my client does not respond to it. And I tried to talk to those charged with governance, and they did not respond to it. Right? I have another responsibility. I'm going to inform Mr. Irfan, that is the auditor, that your client is not being compliant with a particular law and regulation. That is, अगर आप एक प्रोफेशनल अकाउंटेंट हैं, किसी फर्म में काम करते हैं और ऑडिट नहीं कर रहे किसी और असाइनमेंट पे, आप उस क्लाइंट के पास जाके नोक्लार देखते हैं, you are supposed to, after following the chain of command, that is after discussing it with the management, of course, and those charged with governance, you are going to inform the external auditors of that company. अगर external auditors वही firm है जो आपका client जो आपकी firm है, nothing like it, you can talk to the engagement partner, क्योंकि we all know ना, audit partners different होगा, उसका audit partner different होगा, इसका engagement partner different होगा advisory. You can report to them directly, you can inform them. Or if the firm is some other firm, you are supposed to be reporting to that firm, write a letter or whatever, email, but you're supposed to be reporting, and this is what the standard requires. Afterwards, you're supposed to consider whether any further action in public interest is required. Again, by now, I believe that you guys are equipped with the fact that the standard focuses heavily on disclosing the matter in public interest. So we need to understand, यहाँ ये जो third step होता है, third या fourth step, कि public interest में we have to disclose it or not. It's really critical. You have to see कि do I have to disclose it or not? Because you have reported to the external auditor, अब मुझे क्या करना है? ठीक है? Consider whether further action is regarding, example, disclosing to appropriate authority or resigning from the client relation. अच्छा, let's say you decide to resign from the client engagement. ठीक है? आपने, मैं एक और क्वेश्चन कर रहा हूँ, ये सिमिलर सिनेरियो है. I'm the financial advisor for that particular company. वो ऑडिटर थे, मैंने NOCLAR आइडेंटिफाई किया, मैंने मैनेजमेंट से बात कर ली, and now what I'm deciding is that, और मैंने कुछ नहीं किया, I just spoke to the management. I did not report to the auditor. I did not report to the auditor because I said that I'm going to resign straight away. What should I do if I'm resigning? Even if I'm resigning, am I required to report to the auditor or not? What do you guys think? और आपको क्या लगता है स्टैंडर्ड क्या कहता है, और आपको क्या लगता है एथिकली क्या करना चाहिए? मैंने ऑडिटर को तो नहीं रिस्पॉन्ड किया, मैंने मैनेजमेंट से बात की, और लेट्स से मैंने मैनेजमेंट से भी बात नहीं की, या मैंने मैनेजमेंट से बात की, मैनेजमेंट ने मुझे रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं दिया, आई एम रिजाइनिंग फ्रॉम दिस एंगेजमेंट टुडे. What should I do? Should I report to the auditors or not? Because standard का इससे पहले स्लाइड में ऐसा कुछ नहीं लिखा. Waiting for your answer, guys. All right, Iman, do we have questions?
We have one question and few responses.
Okay, first with the question, please.
Okay. Muhammad Ijaz has asked that my question is in context of internal audit. If something identified by internal audit staff relevant to NOCLAR, an internal audit head doesn't agree with that or is not keen to forward to management, then what should be the course of action for field or senior staff?
Yeah, I remember this question and I responded that I'm going to answer this question in a while because we are going to be out from this category then. All right, I'm going to respond it in a while.
So we have responses for your question. Muhammad Bilal Said has said that if management is independent, then that will work. Otherwise, you will have to report to some independent body that can also be ACCA. Babar Iqbal has said that whistleblowing act can be followed. Sayyid Muhammad um, Sayyid Muhammad has said that he should report to the auditor. Zishan
Okay,
Ahmed has said that matter should be reported to external auditor if it has a financial material impact.
all right.
Adnan
Uh,
Ahmed, we have a response. Adnan Ahmed has said that is heavily if the matter hit heavily to public interest, then yes, I will report to authority or external auditor. But if not, we have confidentiality code there.
all right. Uh, yeah, so I was resigning from my engagement because the matter is material, right? We have identified NOCLAR, and when we say NOCLAR now, uh, in our context, NOCLAR means that it has a material impact. So we are all clear with this now. So in that context, I've identified it. If there's a NOCLAR, even if I'm resigning, I'm supposed to be reporting to the external auditor. I'm supposed to inform the external auditor, irrespective I'm going to stay with the client or I'm going to report to the external auditor. ठीक है, यहीं पे जो फाइन लाइन थी वो यहाँ से ही आई है. जो कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी का कोड था, कॉन्फिडेंशियलिटी का कोड यहीं पे ऑडिटर्स को फंसा रहा था या अकाउंटेंट्स को फंसा रहा था. That in such a scenario, what should we do? Now the standard is clear that irrespective of your confidentiality, if you think that there's a NOCLAR, even if you're thinking of resigning from the engagement, you're supposed to be reporting to the external auditors. If you were the auditor और आप चेंज हो रहे, ऑडिट फर्म चेंज हो गई, and you think that NOCLAR है, suspected NOCLAR है, report to the incoming auditor as well. This is where the standard has changed things. और standard ने बोल दिया है कि even in such a scenario when you're breaching confidentiality, it would actually not be a breach. So our context of confidentiality would be kept aside because it's now being allowed. It's an amendment in the section. Okay. Now we'll move forward. This is obligation of professional accountants in business other than senior professional accountants. This is applicable to every other accountant जो कि एक member है किसी professional accounting body का. Even if we are affiliates of ACCA, for example, and we have started working, of course we are not in a senior capacity, right? If we are not in a senior capacity, we fall under this category. Now, what is in this category? We have baseline actions, right? What do we mean by baseline action? Let's start. There was a question, and the question was that if certain NOCLAR is being identified, and you report it with respect to internal audit, and you report it to the head of internal audit, who's not taking any responsibility to it, what you're supposed to do. The standard made this very clear for you. The standard, first of all, identified that someone who's not in a senior position would not be in a capacity to go outside authorities. Of course, you can't do it because we can't take decisions. So the middle management or below that, we are bound by certain limitations, right? You have certain limitations. So what you can do, you can talk to the HOD, that is the head of internal audit. If your head of internal audit is not responding to you, if he's not responding to you, if he's not taking any actions to it, you can go a level above that, and that level would be perhaps the CEO. Even if with the CEO you think the matter is so critical, the matter is so big, then you have some other mechanisms as well, जिस जो कि आपकी organization अगर अच्छी है, आपकी organization के अंदर कोई whistle blowing का mechanism है, तो उसके लिए committee होती है, that is you can report directly anonymously to that committee, right? Or you can even report to those charged with governance. ठीक है जी? This is what is required for professional accountants in business who are not seniors. अब इसके documentation का भी then we're going to revise it a little. For auditors, the standard says that you have to document it. What you're supposed to document it, what was the NOCLAR, how the management responded to NOCLAR, what course of action and judgment made, what is your opinion to it, and how the public interest has been met. Right? That how, for example, यहाँ पे आप ये disclosure में दे रहे होंगे, अपने documentation में लिख रहे होंगे that which authority was responded to. Whether you reported to State Bank, you reported to FBR, etc., etc. For all other categories, that is all three other categories, the standard encourages that we should be keeping documentation, but it's not required. For external auditors, it is required that you keep documentation because, of course, they're supposed to be reporting it. Now, just to give you a quick recap before we get into the final session, we have 4 categories under NOCLAR because NOCLAR is applicable to all the accountants. The 4 categories are auditors, that is professional accountants in public practice, senior professional accountants in business, that is directors, CEOs, CFOs, etc., etc. Professional accountants in public practice other than the audit, that is you're working for any other assignment in a firm. It's a public practice, remember this. And the 4th and the last category, that is professional accountants in business other than being seniors. For all these 4 categories, there are different requirements, but there are certain overlapping requirements which we are going to recall. The overlapping requirement is fulfill professional responsibilities, that we have to check that we are, whether laws and regulations are being followed and appropriate actions are being taken or not. Whether documentation हो रही है, नहीं हो रही, किसको report करना है, that is something else. For all 4 categories, the first line of report is the management. Right? The second, and with the management is those charged with governance, is actually overlapping, वो साथ ही है. आपको देखना है कि आप किस position पे. In all 4 categories, your own judgment is really important. This is common. And in all 4 categories, the principle of objectivity, professional behavior, and due competence, you have to uphold all these 4 categories. All right, guys, remember this fact that this is an ethical requirement. This is a requirement under the Code of Ethics. Anything which is in law is going to override this. If the law says you're supposed to disclose it, you're supposed to disclose this. If a law says you're not supposed to disclose it, then the law takes over the code. Before we go to the next slide, one more thing which was rightly mentioned by one of our participants, that we can also, as being professional accountants, if you're in a situation that you want to report to some authority and you don't find any authority, what you're supposed to be doing. There was a question regarding SMEs as well, which I said I'm going to respond to later on. वो यही था कि in case of SMEs, you don't see any regulations going on. What you are supposed to be doing then? Then, and if you identify certain thing, you can report to a professional body, or you can simply, and even if after, for example, you can report to ACCA, or you can simply resign. If, for example, if I take a very small example in case of SMEs, any one of you who have dealt with an SME, a proper SME as defined by State Bank of Pakistan or SECP, those SMEs which are big businesses, for example, a sole proprietorship or a partnership concern with a good turnover, etc., but it's not regulated because it's not a public limited company. They don't have particular audit requirements, etc., and you see their financial statements as being misreported and etc. So determine the fact that based on those financial statements, is there any public interest? If not, fine, forget it. If you think that uh, certain actions they are taking, your firm, that SME is taking, is against environmental laws, etc., and there's an environmental law, then you can report to that authority, you can report to the court, etc. If you think that SME is conducting a money laundering activity, you can report directly to the financial reporting unit. And if you believe that the SME's financial statements do represent and do is going to affect someone, for example, tax authorities. For example, आपको लगता है कि financial statement इतनी गलत बनी हुई कि government को नुकसान है, tax authorities को नुकसान है, so you can report directly to a professional body over here. In this scenario, we would be reporting to ICAP and ACC, because ICAP would be regulating the local audit industry, etc. And उनका audit हो रहा होता है, so we are supposed to be reporting to them. I've seen certain SME irregularities in audit reports and all, and we have spoken, and because I'm telling you this from my experience, and we have spoken to the professional bodies in certain scenarios, that we have identified an audit report with a lot of anomalies, a financial statement, a lot of anomalies, but it was signed, etc., etc., and the matter was taken up by the professional body, by the way. All right, guys. Finally, I'm going to conclude now. I'm going to say that this can't be done, NOCLAR can't be done by just us. All professional bodies throughout the world since 2017 has been conducting seminars and webinars on this particular topic, because this has become really important, and because of the fact that the principle of the principle of confidentiality has taken a new meaning now. So a lot of people are focusing it, but we can't be doing this alone. We need a lot of people on board, especially the government and the board of directors. I think other institutions, for example, universities, the Institute of Corporate Governance of Pakistan, they should all be on board, and we should be having more seminars and talks on it. Because unless and until we keep a mindset like that, we can't be reporting to it. If you guys identify a NOCLAR in your organization, you talk to someone and they're not taking appropriate action because they're not educated on what is happening, and you're supposed to be doing it. I hope this was meaningful to you guys and it was helpful as well. If there's any further questions, you can ask me and then we can conclude the session. Thank you, guys. Yeah, Iman, do we have questions?
Yes, sir, please give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
We do not have any questions yet, but I think in about 5 minutes, if anybody wants to ask, can ask.
All right. Guys, if you guys have any questions related to NOCLA or any other thing, please ask the questions. Okay, Iman, do we have questions?
No, sir, we do not have any questions. We have some comments from members. They are thanking you for this session. Nabil Ibrahim has said that excellent session. Thank you. Omar Ali has said that great session. Everything was explained very efficiently. Thank you. We have some more thank yous coming in.
All right, thank you so much, guys, and you guys have been a wonderful audience. Best of luck for the future, and I hope that we are going to act in the public interest in a better manner from now on. Take care and Allah Hafiz. We should end the session now.